Hare Krishna. So I will be speaking about the stages in Bhakti. Okay. Before that, I'm just going to offer Pranam Mantra. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthai Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desataya. Okay. Hare Krishna again. And my name is Ujjvala Rasajna Dasi, and I will be presenting on the topic stages of Bhakti. Okay, I'm going to bring up the slideshow here. Just making sure I have the internet connection. Okay, good. So I'm going to bring up that slide now about the stages of Bhakti. Pause the recording for me. Okay, I'll resume the recording now. Right, so that's the presentation. Those are the slides for stages of Bhakti. So what is Bhakti? So we want to know what Bhakti is. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, nectar of devotion. Srila Rupa Goswami describes that there. Anya bhilashita sunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. Means Anya bhilashita shunyam, devoid of any other desire and not clouded by jnana or fruitive activity. With this, offering favorable service in relationship to Lord Krishna is pure devotion, pure devotional service. Bhaktir Uttama. So that's what that Uttama Bhakti means. That's so wonderful. I mean, simply pleasing Krishna by offering favorable service to him is the topmost jewel that we can get. But how do we know that? What does the scripture say about the rarity of this pure devotional service? Okay. So we'll say what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying. First of all, we want to see how rare is the human birth. And on top of that, how rare is this pure devotional service where you know the absolute truth as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, and you're offering transcendental loving service to him. How rare is that? Let's see. So this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 9th chapter, 29th sloka. Labdva sudurlabhamidam bahusambhavante manusyamarthadam anityamapiha dhiraha Turnam yate tanapate tanumrutyu yavan Nihishreyasaya Vishaya Kalu Sarvatashya. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying. After many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. So that's the thing. There are about 18,400,000 species. But this Krishna Bhavana, the Krishna consciousness, is not so much possible in other species. Only in this human birth, we have this atato brahma jignasa, the inquisitiveness to know who we are and what is the whole thing about, where we are from. All that inquisitiveness is present in human birth. And on top of that, this human body is a perfect vehicle for self realization or God realization because this human body doesn't offer us too much of sukham, pleasure, and is not prone to too much of dukkham, misery also, when compared to the bodies that are there, in the hellish conditions where the bodies are always prone to so many miseries all the time. And compared to those bodies in the Swargaloka, where the bodies are just very much engaged in the pleasures that are available there. So in either of these two extremities, when somebody is always miserable, as in the hellish condition, in those planets, or when somebody is always drowned in pleasure, material pleasures, as in heaven, self-realization is either not a priority to them because they're drowned in the pleasure, or is not possible to them because they are so much drowned in the misery, as in the hellish conditions, in the hellish planets. So that's why human body is just the midway in between, with not too much pain and not too much pleasure. That way, it's very much appropriate for self-realization. So that's why human birth is very rare, very precious, and is meant for God realization. Okay. So we have this human birth, which is very rare. That's wonderful. And what next on top of that we have? Krishna Bhakti. We are all given this wonderful, rare gift of Bhakti. And in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, how this Krishna Bhakti, knowing Lord Krishna in full and offering service to him, is so rare. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate. Vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. Jnanavan mam prapadyate. So after many, many lives, when one realizes, when his knowledge fructifies, then he would know that he has to do prapadyanti. He has to seek shelter of Lord Krishna since he is the absolute truth. That's what bhakti is. Bhakti is about seeking shelter to Lord Sri Krishna. So for somebody to come to that conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna is the absolute and I have to do that prapadyante, that is so very rare. Sa mahatma sudurlabha. That kind of person who comes to that conclusion and surrenders to Lord Krishna in devotional service is very rare. So now let's look and see how lucky we are. We have this human birth and we are given this gift of pure bhakti. Kanaman, doing the recording, please. Yeah. We are doing this pure bhakti. So how wonderful is that? How rare is the gift that's given to us? So we want to cherish that. We want to cherish that bhakti, cherish it and distribute it. Just wanted to bring that also to our attention. So we cherish this bhakti. So this is wonderful. Now that we are in this path of bhakti, it'll be good for us to know what to expect in this journey of bhakti, right? So we can be prepared, we can be cautious, we can be vigilant, and we can keep the things that are required to keep our journey smooth, and we can avoid the things that might hinder our progress in this journey. So for that reason, we want to know the stages of bhakti. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam, beautifully enumerates different stages of bhakti that one goes through in this path of devotion. All of us who start this process of bhakti, they go through these phases. Okay, and let's see what those phases are. Bhagavatam, traditionally, the staging is done like this, this 9 stages of bhakti. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elaborates on this staging even further and beautifully explains also. So this is a detailed further enumeration and elaboration of stages of bhakti. These are from 1 to 16, from Satam Kripa to Harir Madhuryanubhavam. So just to get familiar with these stages, these are the stages here, the 9 stages, and here the 16 stages. And just to let you know that these stages here from Satam Kripa to Harir Madhuryanubhavam, all of these stages will be covered. These stages detail the stages of bhakti. So all these 9 stages here, from Shraddha to Prema, they are already covered in these 16 stages that are elaborated. Okay. So we want to understand what these stages are. We want to understand about these stages through Srimad Bhagavatam with the help of the life of Sri Narada Muni. So we'll understand these stages with the help of Narada Muni's life. Okay. First, we'll see what Bhagavatam is saying, and then we will go to Narada Muni's life simultaneously and get more understanding about what Bhagavatam is saying. Okay. So this is what Bhagavatam says. Shushrusho Shraddhadanasya Vasudeva Katharuchehe Shyan Mahatsevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevanat. So in this sloka, this sloka is about how to increase the affinity to hearing. The whole point is in this stage, in this journey of bhakti, we want to hear about bhakti from a realized soul. What this bhakti means, how to perform this bhakti, and guidance from a realized soul from time to time, periodically, just to make sure that we are heading the right way. So all this happens when we are hearing about this bhakti from a realized soul. That is very important. But not everybody has that affinity to hear. Affinity to hear with great attachment and faith from the pure devotees is not very common and may not just happen automatically with all of us. Then what to do? Bhagavatam is saying, render service to those devotees. When you render service to those devotees, then the affinity to hear what they are saying about these transcendental topics will automatically awaken within us. So that's why service to the devotee is very important, to increase the affinity to hear Krishna Katha from the pure devotees, these advanced realized souls. And after that affinity increases and we start hearing Krishna Katha from these realized souls, when we are actually hearing Krishna Katha from them, what happens? Shrinvatam Svakatah Krishnaha Punyashravana Kirtanaha Ridantasto hi abhadrani Vidhunoti Suhritsatam Vidhunoti Suhritsatam. When we hear these topics of Krishna Katha, then as the topics enter into the holes of the ear and enter into the heart, the Paramatma sitting in the heart starts doing some magic there. What he does is he decreases the tendency to enjoy this material world. And because of that, we lose interest in anything external, sense gratification that are, not of much value. We automatically lose interest in those things. And that's because Paramatma that is sitting in the heart makes those changes when we hear that Krishna Katha. Vidhunoti Sahrit Satam. Here the translation says, he cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So that's what happens. Hearing from the realized source, and when we hear, the Paramatma in the heart decreases our material attachment. He cleanses our heart. Vidhunoti, dhunoti, cleanses. Vidhunoti, thoroughly cleanses our heart from any material attachment. That's what happens. And now, since we heard this from Bhagavatam about the affinity to hear from the realized souls, and the result of that hearing, which is cleansing that's happening in the heart, let's see what happened in Narada Muni's life. Did it happen according to what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying? Okay, let's see that. You must be knowing the life of Narada Muni, right? Narada Muni, life of Narada Muni, what I meant is the previous life of Narada Muni, before he actually became Narada Muni, the spiritual body. So, in the previous life of Narada Muni, he was a son of a maid servant, very poor. He was in a poverty-stricken condition, and son of a maid servant. Okay, so what happens is in Chaturmasya, when the sages were traveling, they had to halt because of this Chaturmasya, because of this rainy season, and since they cannot do the traveling in rainy season, they had to halt in motel-like places in those times, And Narada Muni's mother, she was offering that accommodation service in those days, and the sages happened to stop by in her facility where she was accommodating guests in her house, where she was ready to serve guests. So it's more like an accommodation service that she was offering to the guests that were that had to halt for the rainy season. So Narada Muni, this boy, in his previous life, is a small boy. So this small boy, he meets the sages. That's the first thing that happens to Narada Muni. I'm going to say Narada Muni, but actually we are talking about his previous life where he was a small boy, when he was a small boy. Okay. So this small boy, he was just an ordinary boy before he meets this sages. But when the sages came to his home and resided there temporarily, that's the first thing that happens. And that is Satam Kripa. This sadhu Kripa, mercy from the devotees. There's no big reason why they had to come to Narada Muni place and stay there. They could have gone to somewhere else too. But it just so happened, it is causeless, that they were just merciful, kind, and chose to just come and stay in Narad Muni's place. So that particular stage, the very initial stage, um, that starts in a devotee's life is named Satam Kripa. Okay. And then what happens? This Narad Muni, this little boy, he served the sages. After sages came in and resided in that place, he served the sages. That's the second step, Mahat Seva. He offered Mahat Seva. And then what happened? As he was doing that seva to these realized souls, his faith about the spiritual topics grew more and more. So that is the stage of Shraddha. Okay? And as this Shraddha grew more and more, he wanted to commit to this process of bhakti, the process of taking shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that particular stage is called Guru Padashraya, committed to the spiritual life and asking for the shelter of the Sampradaya through a Guru that can initiate us. That is Guru Padashraya. That's what happened to that small boy. As this small boy, Narada Muni, he started worshipping eagerly after his initiation, after taking Diksha. And he started developing all good qualities. And that's the stage of bhakti after the Guru Padashraya. And as he started worshipping eagerly, all his anarthas were also going away. And he was taking the remnants of the sages too. And so the anarthas, unwanted things in his heart, they are slowly started disappearing because of the service that he was offering to the sages, because of the remnants that he was taking from the sages, and because of the intense worship that he was performing. All the inauspicious things from his heart started to disappear. And that particular stage is called Anarthapagamam or Anarthanivritti. Okay? I'll just take you to the slide so you know where we are at. See, we have talked about this Satam Kripa, Mahat Seva, Shraddha, Guru Padashraya, Bhajaneshu Spruha, Bhakti, Anarthapagamam, till here. Okay? We spoke from 1 to 9 in this staging, and here from 1 to 4, the Shraddha to Anarthanivritti. Okay? What happens next? When all these obstacles are going away from the heart, all the unwanted things are going away from the heart, what happens next? We'll see what Bhagavatam is saying. Okay. Nishtha, we become very steady in the devotional service. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So all the nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, all the abhadras that are present in our heart, they just go away because of nityam bhagavata sevaya, because of performing service to nityam, regular service to Bhagavatam. Two kinds of Bhagavatam, both to book Bhagavatam and person Bhagavatam. When we are offering service like that, nityam, every day, regularly, then all the abhadras that are present in our heart, they would go away, and then we come to the stage of bhaktir bhavati naishtiki bhakti, steady service. And let me read this translation for you. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So in the stage of Nishtha, it is said that the lower modes like ignorance and passion, they're almost wiped out and are um, replaced by the mode of goodness, the higher modes. Okay. That's the stage of Nishtha, where the bhakti is getting steady. And next, here in this stage, which is Ruchi, all the lower modes, the ignorance, passion, they are disappeared even more than the Nishtha. Because there is so much of room that is left in the heart that is cleared by these lower modes, the bhakti has a place now to come and sit in the heart. So this is the stage called Ruchi, where there are very least anarthas in the heart and a lot of bhakti that is sitting in the heart. That's the stage of Ruchi. And that's what Bhagavatam is saying here. Tada rajastamo bhavaha kamalobhadayaschaye cheta etairana viddham stitam sattve prasidati. Stitam sattve prasidati. So the mood of goodness is steadily established in the heart because tada rajas tamo bhavaha, the rajaguna and tamoguna is almost completely gone from the heart. So sattva guna has become predominant. That's ruchi. And the next stage, asakti, is also included in this sloka. The difference between ruchi and asakti is this. In ruchi, there is no struggle to do the devotional service 24/7. And in asakti, one is not aware of any struggle at all and is addicted to the devotional service. That is asakti. It's just because they are so much free of lower modes, the passion and ignorance. Okay? And this is even more nicely explained in the life of Narada Muni. We'll see how his ruchi and asakti is manifested. Okay, so that's where it is. Until now, Narada Muni's anarthas were all gone, and he has come to the stage of Nishtha. And how did that happen? The steadiness appeared within him. So that stage is Nishtha, as we just discussed about what Bhagavatam said. This is what happened in Narada Muni's life. He has come to the stage of Nishtha after the Anartha Nivritti happened, as he was serving the sages, Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya. By doing so, he has come to the stage of Nishtha, steady bhakti. And after that, what happened to him? He had no longer any taste for material objects. That's the difference. In the stage of Ruchi, there is Ruchi only for the Krishna Kada, Krishna Seva, and Ruchi for only things related to Krishna. And there is no taste for anything material. That's Ruchi. So Narada Muni, he had no longer taste for material objects. And his spiritual taste rose in him. And the beautiful thing here is the heart is not pierced by sense objects anymore. I think that's a beautiful way of saying, describing Ruchi. So the devotee is not troubled with any selfish desires or desires for material enjoyment. He's not troubled. His heart is not pierced by those arrows of wanting to enjoy materially, wanting to have sense enjoyment. So that beautiful stage is Ruchi. Okay? Next is Asakti. So Narada Muni, after he has attained this beautiful stage, Ruchi, um, he had great attachment for Lord manifested in him. See, by the stage of Asakti, there is the Lord starts manifesting in the heart because we don't have the taste for material objects anymore. The taste for anything related to Krishna is great. Lord starts appearing in the heart, and that stage is Asakti. And at this time, Narada Muni, he was attentively hearing Krishna Katha every day because he had so much taste. He developed so much taste for Krishna Katha. So if we notice here in Ruchi, there is no longer taste for material enjoyment. Asakti, great attachment for Lord is manifested. So that's a little distinguishing point of how the progression is happening. Next thing, yeah. Bhagavatam says when somebody comes to the stage of Ruchi, and the next thing would be progression to Bhava and Prema. What is that? How does that happen? Evam prasanna manaso Bhagavat Bhakti Yogatah Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate. So in this stage of Bhava and Prema, thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness. So by this stage, by the time of Asakti itself, the mode of goodness is predominant in the heart, and the lower modes are absent. And the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. So by this time, in the stage of Bhava, devotee has lost contact with anything material. In other words, the consciousness does not have any tinge of materialism or selfish, not just the selfish desire, but all that they see is only Krishna and everything in relevance to Krishna and nothing else. That's the stage of Bhava. And Prema is, we will see in the words of, in the life of Narada Muni, how that manifested. Okay, so yes, this is the one. So far we have come to till Asakti in the life of Narada Muni, where there was great attachment for the Lord and his attentive hearing of Krishna Katha every day was happening without fail. So that's the stage of Asakti where there was great attachment to Lord. And what's next? What happened to Narada Muni next? His attachment to Lord Krishna transformed to fondness of the Lord, and he directly experienced his gross and subtle bodies fixed only on him. That is Bhava. We were just talking, right? Bhava is a stage where a devotee, as Narada had his experience in the life, they see only Krishna. His gross body, his physical body, and subtle body, his mind and intelligence is just fixed only on Krishna. So everything is Krishna, everything is just related to Krishna. That's the stage of Rati and Bhava. And what happened? Soon this turned to bonding in devotional love with the Lord in the heart. So that bonding beyond attachment, that transcendental bonding to the Lord in the heart is prema. And generally by this time, devotee, it is said that by the stage of prema, the body cannot take that intense love that one has for uh, the Lord. So they quit this material body and then they get a total spiritual body and enter into um, Vrindavan in the material realm, you know, Gokula. So at this stage, when the devotee has the stage of bhava and is making transition to prema, that happens from the material body to total spiritual body, where he would be born and where the Lord Krishna's pastimes would happen. That is uh, Gokula, wherever that is in any of these material universes. And so that's prema. Okay, but in this case of Narada Muni, what happened is, so he had this intense bonding in devotional love with the Lord in the heart, which is prema. And soon what happened? As he meditated on Lord's lotus feet, using his intelligence given by sages, tears rolled from his eyes due to longing, and gradually Krishna appeared in his heart. This is called darshan, right? When the Lord is appearing in front of this little boy. That's the stage of darshan, where a devotee can actually see Krishna, the Lord in the heart, perceive Krishna, not with this material eyes, but in the um, spiritual realm, with the transcendental eyes, in the meditation. That's darshana. And that darshanam is generally not just like we are seeing somebody on the screen. Then that would be just seeing somebody on the screen. But in the case of darshanam with the Lord, it's a total experience, the experience of the Lord. And that experience of the Lord is Hari Madhurya Anubhavam. So the sweetness of the Lord is perceived, experienced, tasted by the devotee. And that stage, that final stage is Harir Madhurya Anubhavam, where every part of his body was enlivened, separately enlivened. That's what happened to Narada Muni. So for him, in the very same life, as a small boy in his previous life, that darshanam happened in his heart. He could see the Lord of the heart, the Lord in the heart, and he could experience the sweetness of the heart, the sweetness of the Lord. So that's Harir Madhurya. So this is what happened in Narada Muni's life. So these are all the stages. As mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni passed through these stages, starting from when the sages came in, Satam Kripa, till he could perceive and experience the sweetness of the Lord. Harir Madhurya. That's what happened in Narada Muni's life, and that's what happens in any devotee's life who is in the journey of this bhakti. So, darshanam. Yeah, these are additional points about darshanam. You know, when Paramatma appears, gives his darshan to this little boy, you know, who's Narada Muni later. He makes it clear that he appeared to Narada Muni, this little boy, just because Lord chose to give his darshan, not because of how intensely he did the meditation and what techniques he used. So darshan of the Lord is not dependent upon our techniques or our own efforts. It's totally dependent on his sweet will to appear, to give his darshan to us. we may be able to invoke His mercy by our efforts. And seeing our sincere efforts, He may choose to appear to us. He's not obligated to. But at least from our side, if we show that we are longing to see Him, and if that is translated as our efforts, then the chances of He giving His darshan are high again, just because He's merciful and He might want to reciprocate with our efforts. So that point was made clear. And yeah, finally, Paramatma, the Lord in the heart, He glorifies Bhakti so well. He tells Narada Muni, Sat Sevaya Dirgaya Api Chatamaye Dridhamatihi Hitva Vadyam Imam Lokam Gantam Majjanatamasi. By service of the absolute truth, even for a few days, a devotee attains firm and fixed intelligence in me. That's the Lord speaking to Narada. Well, boy. Consequently, he goes on to become my associate in the transcendental world after giving up the present deplorable material worlds. So that's the assurance that Paramatma, Sri Krishna Paramatma, the Lord in the heart, is giving us. So, if we are situated well in the service of the absolute truth, and we are firm and fixed in our intelligence on Lord Sri Krishna, then quickly we become His associate in the transcendental world. After we leave this material realm, or we don't necessarily have to leave this material body, because in the stage of bhava, a devotee is still present in the material body, but totally unconscious of his body and the needs of the body. So by that stage itself, he is with the Lord in his consciousness in the spiritual realm. And of course, as the stages progress, when the body cannot take the transcendental ecstasy and transformation that's happening, if this mortal body cannot take, then we take a spiritual body and enter into the spiritual realm. But this is a wonderful thing that Lord is assuring us, that this is a possibility for all the sadhakas in their journey in bhakti, because bhakti is so potent. And prapatyante mam eva ye prapatyante maya ye tam tarantite. The process of bhakti is basically the process of taking shelter of Guru and Krishna. And that process is very potent. So with that, I am going to pause here, but just quickly to recap, we talked about how rare is the human birth and how even more rare it is to have this precious gift of bhakti, pure devotion. And then we talked about the stages of bhakti. Okay. There are two kinds of staging. In the traditional staging, it starts with this is the slide I was talking about. See, it starts with Shraddha and ends with Prema, the 9 stages. And in this staging by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it's even more elaborated. So starts with Saddam Kripa and ends with the Harir Madhurya Anubhavam. By this time, you have a spiritual body. Okay? And here you see, these are the stages that are equated here in 2 different stages. Okay, so that's what we discussed about, different stages of bhakti. So thank you all so much. And vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo. Hare Krishna.